Welcome to AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. Educate. Celebrate. Connect. Arizona Hispanic Connection.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. This is David Parra with AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. I always say this, but I have to say it again. This is a special show. And it is a special show because we're dealing with the issue of dreamers. Who are they? So we have invited six dreamers. They're here with us in the studio. And we're going to carry out a conversation because I hope I don't expose a relative that I had a conversation with yesterday. And he basically said, who are the dreamers? What is that? So I think that that kind of shows that not a lot of people know about the dreamers. I mean, and there could be misconceptions about the dreamers. But I did a commercial. I don't know if you got a chance to hear it over the week, but it says something to the effect of that you guys are students, professionals, contributors, Americans in every sense, but one, right? Is that accurate? And so that's basically what we are going to be talking about today. I came to the country in 1978 when I was 12 years old. And I kind of relate a little bit because I was fortunate to come already with permanent residency through my parents who at one point was bracero. My dad came as a bracero and eventually we all were granted the permanent residency. Let me get into some data, and then I'll introduce you, and then we'll get the conversation going. The population in the United States is about 325 million. 325. We have a roughly 63 to 65% white, roughly 13 to 15% African Americans, and roughly 17 to 20% Latino. And who knows? The census is going to be taken in 2020, so who knows what the new numbers will show. There are roughly 11 million undocumented persons. And 1 million of those 11 millions came to the country, basically were brought in by the parents, correct? And they basically grew up in this country, in many instances, not even knowing that you did not have documents. And in 2001, a bill was introduced to Congress, and that bill was called the Development, D, Relief, R, and Education, E, for Alien, A, Minors, M, Act. The acronym is the DREAM Act. Obviously, the idea with this bill was that they were going to offer permanent residency and with a path to citizenship, and it's still there, right? It's gone nowhere. And that's where the name Dreamers come from. You know, that is that group of individuals that the DREAM Act was supposed to support. Then we understand that in 2012, President Barack Obama signed an executive order called DACA, which is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. And then in 2017, President Donald J. Trump basically undid that and basically set a date for Congress to do something. But then in 2018, in his address, he came up with 4 pillars regarding immigration reform. So that's where we're at. But today, what we want to do is really get to know you more, get to know you better. Because again, I don't think people really know what it is to be a dreamer, what it is to grow up in this country. My daughter-in-law was a dreamer. And I asked her, when did you learn that you were undocumented? She says, when I tried to go to college. When she tried to go to college, then she hit a roadblock. And I think that's probably the experience of some of you and of many people. Let me introduce you, and then I'll throw in some questions. I have about 12 questions, and then we just take turns. And please feel free, relax, and just share with the listeners, who are you? And what is your impression of who dreamers are, even beyond you, right? Because I'm sure you know many of them. On my left, we have Leonardo Nava, correct? Welcome, yes, Leonardo.
That's correct. Hello.
Yeah. And then Dulce Matus.
Matus.
And congratulations for everything that you've done. And we'll hear more about your story, but welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very grateful for being here.
Thank you. And then Jessica Rubio. Jessica Rubio is also a dreamer. Jessica, welcome.
Thank you.
Now, let me start here. I believe you are Salvador Macias. And Salvador Macias, again, now you are a JD. And I had to go to Google I had to Google JD. What does JD means?
As of, I believe it was Wednesday of this last week, I have become an official attorney in the state of Arizona.
So JD stands for
it's a doctorate.
A doctorate.
Yeah, it's a Juris Doctor.
In law.
In
basically.
law, correct.
Perfect. And then we come to Tanairi. Did I get it right? Mm-hmm. I got it right. See, everybody has the trouble pronouncing your name. Tanairi, welcome to our show.
Thank you.
And I understand that you are due to have your second baby. When are you due?
On Monday.
Oh, wow.
Or today. You never know.
Never know when it can happen. Mm-hmm. Welcome again.
Thank you.
And then to my right again, we have, did you say Andres Rivera, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, Andres Rivera. Perfect. Okay, so let me start asking the questions. And again, just feel free to, we really want to ask you to share with us who you are, your experiences, so that people who are listening can kind of get an idea what it is to be a dreamer, okay? So here's the first question. How old were you when you entered the United States, and where were you born?
Well, here, so I was born and raised in Mexico, Querétaro, Mexico.
Querétaro?
Yeah, and I came here when I was 14.
14, okay.
I'm Dulce, and I was born in Hermosillo, Sonora, Mexico.
Very close.
Yeah. I mean, 6.5 hour drive, and I had the pleasure to visit there frequently now. But I came here to the United States when I was 15 years old.
15, okay. Thank you, Dulce.
Leonardo here, and I was roughly about less than 6 months when I came here.
Wow, 6 months.
Yeah, 6 months. So this is the country that I've known my entire life.
So you don't, are you of Mexican descent?
Well, my parents are. My dad's from Acapulco and my mom's from DF. As far as I know, I was born in DF, Mexico.
Okay, so basically you've never been to Mexico?
I've never been to Mexico, no.
So when they talk about going back to your country, you really don't have a country other than the United States. That is so amazing.
Taking a vacation to like Puerto Peñasco, I'm like, what is that, you know?
Right.
So.
Yes, I was born in Aguascalientes, Mexico, and I came to the United States when I was 4 years old.
4 years.
So I was a little older than Leonardo, but all I remember are just fragments and pictures, like the park and a little shopping center,
right.
You know, or running to the bus because my dad was going to work. So we've been here forever.
Right.
I'm from Sinaloa, Mexico, and I was brought here in 1994, so I was 3 years old.
3 years old. So you really don't remember much about Sinaloa. What part of Sinaloa?
Culiacan.
Okay. And then Andres? You're the youngest, I think, aren't you?
Yeah, I barely turned 19 in November.
Yeah.
I barely turned 19 in November. So I was born in San Miguel de Allende, Guanajuato, and I was brought here when I was 3 years old.
3 years
and like
old.
Sal, I still like have fragments of everything. I still remember my parents' little shop that they had, everything that they would sell. I would go and grab and eat, and then on the way over here, I still remember like being in the shipping containers and all that.
Yeah.
The trip was pretty fun from what I recall, but I mean, I was a kid.
Yeah. Now, in my experience, when I came, I was 12 years old, so I had to literally learn to adopt another country because at 12, you kind of develop an identity of your country. So I felt like I was Mexican, but I had to and it takes time, to adopt another country, basically. So for some of you, you did not have to go through that, right? The United States is the only country that you've known, and how's that experience?
I don't know what it's like in Mexico, so I really don't think much about it. It's just I just love hearing stories about everyone's from Mexico, like La Llorona, La Chupacabra, and things like that.
The stories of Vaporub?
I've never heard of that.
Oh, that one?
No.
Okay.
Oh, wait, the Vaporub. Yes. Heals everything. But so other than that, that's about it.
Now, do you speak Spanish?
Sí, hablo español.
Yeah. So all of you obviously speak Spanish. Did any one of you came with a visa and then you just overstayed the visa? Anybody?
I don't think I did.
Mm-hmm.
This is Dulce, and yes, I had a tourist visa, and I remember going back and forth and visiting my uncles, my aunts, going to Disneyland, and then when I was 15, I came with a visa and overstayed.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So how did you learn? How did you become really aware that you were undocumented?
It was definitely during sophomore year of high school. My entire career, basically, education, my mom told me that I needed to be different than everybody else. And so by doing so, I've always excelled in all of my, math subjects and things like that. And closer to sophomore year, everyone was talking about, I've already applied to colleges, this and that. I already got some scholarships. And I started looking into it, and a lot of applications said you have to be a U.S. citizen. And I asked my mom, I was like, what does that mean? And at that point, that's when I realized, she told me, you can't apply for think like that.
Amazing.
And so that's when it really hit me. And so ever since I've been trying to
And how did you feel just to hear those concepts?
Really terrible, because it feels like everything you've worked for to that point is for nothing. And to me, it was really heartbreaking. Yeah.
Right.
So for me, I actually kind of always knew I was undocumented. And I know that's kind of hard to think of as a 4-year-old, but I remember crossing the border. I remember that I actually crossed through a legal point of entry and not jumping the wall and then underneath it. I came in the car, never met this lady in my life, but here I am as a 4-year-old in the back of a car with a lady I hardly knew.
Right.
So for me, I've always known, which is a good thing and a bad thing. It kind of also put me on a path where I, unfortunately, was afraid of law enforcement. And I was afraid to say who I was. And I was trying to stay within these lines. And unfortunately, and I'm sure this is experience for a lot of the dreamers, I felt alone because I couldn't talk about my identity until middle school.
The 90?
My parents never hid it from me either.
Okay.
I don't remember at 3-year-old, but as soon as I have conscience, I probably realized more when I was a second grader. And my teacher told me I couldn't speak Spanish, so here I am saying, well, okay, I'm not going to speak English. So I stopped speaking English 2nd, 3rd grade until one of my teachers in 4th grade was more supportive. And I've always been open with my identity. I usually know who to trust. And I've been fortunate enough to have teachers and mentors in my life that whenever I opened up to them, they were very supportive.
Right.
It wasn't until high school where I was valedictorian for all 4 years that one of my teachers says you cannot let a Mexican be valedictorian. And
Wow.
the valedictorian and number 3 were twins, and obviously Anglo. So that's why Mexican couldn't be valedictorian at that time.
Wow. We have to pick up this subject when we come back. We're going to go on our first break. You're listening to AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. We'll be right back.
Welcome to AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. Educate. Celebrate. Connect. Arizona Hispanic Connection.
Thank you. Thank you for staying with us. This is AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection, with a very special subject today. It's called Dreamers. Who are they? And we have 6 guests with us today that either were dreamers, are still dreamers. Some are still dreamers. Others are no longer dreamers. And we can get into that as well. But I think that we have at least two of you who will tell us about how you learned that you were undocumented and how did it hit you.
This is Jessica again. I think for me, I always knew that I was undocumented. I came here when I was 14, so I remember everything about growing up in Mexico. Like I always went to school over there, so it was nothing that I didn't know. So that brought like a realistic factor to my life, right? Like I always knew that I was in a disadvantage, but I also knew that like I wanted to succeed no matter what, right? So I figure it out, right? We work and we figure things out, and we make things happen. So, yeah, for me, it was just like I always knew, and up to this point, like I'm always going to know that.
I've known you for at least seen you very active in that community. And do you think if you had remained in Mexico, you would be this active? I mean, you think you have like an activist within you?
That actually, I have no idea, because there is a lot of movements in Mexico as well. There is a lot going on over there, especially right now with the current president and the different reforms that they're making, and I mean, like the cartels, and there's a lot going on in Mexico.
Are you in touch with younger people from there that are kind of part of this, or not necessarily?
No, not really. And actually, like 3 years ago when I went back, I wanted to like do more research to get to know people that were in the movement over there. But to be honest, like I didn't feel like I was completely from over there. Like it was not
it's interesting,
ni de aquí ni de allá.
Right,
like
right.
Literally, because I was like Americanized for them and for
Too American. And then not enough Mexican.
Yeah.
Or not Mexican enough.
Yeah, right? Like, not Mexican enough, but also here is like not American enough.
Right.
So,
that's tough, isn't it?
It
You want to add something, Dulce?
Well, for me, it was like I came when I was 15, so I knew something was off. I didn't really had a meaning what it, like, oh, you don't have papers, or it's just like I knew that something was happening, but I tried to live a normal life as much as I could until I decided to go to Arizona State University. That's where things got real for me. That was a reality check when I was online trying to apply for ASU, and then I couldn't get that far because they were asking you for the 9-digit number. And that's when it clicked, and it's like, oh, so this is what it really means. Okay. It means that maybe you don't get to go to college. But I was always fortunate enough to have the right people and have the right surroundings, and I was able to go to college.
Perfect. And we'll get to that point in just a bit. Now, you haven't...
No.
Okay, go ahead.
So I think for me, I found out so I have an older sister, and she's the one that found out. And then like soon after I found out, I was probably like in 6th grade. She was in her freshman year, getting ready to like apply and everything, and she found out. And then I'm like, I questioned if I was a U.S. citizen, and then I found out that I was not. So that's probably how I found out.
Yeah. Are you still in school or working?
Yeah, I actually go to Phoenix College.
Okay. Yeah. How many of you have siblings that were born after you came to this country? In other words, that they were born here now.
I actually have 3 younger siblings, 1 little brother and 2 little brothers. And whenever they see what I'm going through, they don't quite understand it because, they're young, first of all. And, they ask questions like, well, why does he have to do this way? And then that's when my mom steps in and has to explain, he wasn't born here, and so he doesn't have the same opportunities that you guys have. And then she uses me as like a role model thing, and she's like, that's why you guys have to be like him, to have more opportunities, more than, he was given.
Yeah.
So.
Let me ask the next question. What did the granting of DACA mean to you? In other words, here you are, just going, about your life, and all of a sudden, you begin to realize that you're undocumented, you begin to face some obstacles, and all of a sudden, DACA comes in. How does that affect it or change things for you?
When it was a 2-year process for me. For other people, it was 6 months. Other people, they got in less than that. But for me, it was a very long process because they kept asking her for evidence, and I was very confused because I've never gotten in trouble. I've always stayed out of trouble. And so when it came, I was actually eating cereal, and I refreshed the U.S. CIS page, and it says your case was approved.
Wow.
And I didn't know what I was feeling, but certainly I was most definitely crying because it was it was relieved. I was very relieved. It was like a breather. And, finally, I can do not everything, but most of, I can contribute.
Right.
For me, I thought of everyone else, and I was a sophomore or junior in college, entering into my junior year, and I started organizing. I was an organizer before then. I just made phone calls, make sure we had legal help, and the other important thing for me was fundraising. The reality was that most of us couldn't even afford the $465. I mean, our parents barely had $500 for the rent.
And I assume that was the case of thousands of people.
Yes. So I started organizing, and it was hard. There were setbacks because I was in a private institution that we had to be careful too, because a lot of us were funded privately. But I was able to reach $30,000 in less than 2 months just doing asks and getting personal checks.
So that was to help others?
Yes.
Okay.
So we were able to help everyone at my school that had DACA, and in the surroundings too in the city.
Help us understand. So you mentioned school. So was there a big thing at schools when this happened, or not necessarily? I
was out of state because ASU obviously denied my scholarship. Valedictorians here have the right to go on a full ride at any 3 public institutions, but I couldn't go because so I had to go to a private institution on a full ride out of state.
Okay.
It wasn't as active as Phoenix, especially because of SB 1070. There was other factors involved here before DACA was implemented. So the organizing, the level of activity here in Phoenix was high levels, and it was one of the things that I struggled leaving the state because I left right when 1070 started.
Thank you.
Well, for me, I still remember when DACA was announced, and even though that by that time I had already had my work permit because I was able to adjust my status through my husband, I remember being in California and doing a protest outside of immigration detention in California. And that's when we had the announcement. And right after, I think it was a big deal. For me, even though that I wasn't going to apply for it, because I've been involved for quite a while.
Right.
And I thought that the Dream Act would have already passed a long time ago. But it was a big victory. And I remember organizing the big workshops where people will go and apply for DACA.
Now, if I remember right, in the realm of politics, there was a sense that DACA was not really the best thing on earth because of what you really needed and wanted in the DREAM Act. But in the actual experience, did you care about that, or you were just happy that you got at least this DACA?
Well, I think for me it was about the context, right? In 2010, we just had the DREAM Act fail to overcome the filibuster in the Senate, even though that we had always had the public support. Over 70% of Americans support the DREAM Act. We had the House of Representatives pass the DREAM Act. It came for a vote in the Senate 3 times, and we had majority. We just couldn't overcome the filibuster. So that was very devastating. So we needed to switch gears and have another strategy. And DACA was the strategy that we had to pursue after failing the filibuster in the Senate.
Right.
And it was a very successful campaign. I think it's not perfect. And even when the DREAM Act passes, it's not going to be perfect. Even if immigration reform happens, it's not going to be perfect because I don't think we're fighting for having an immigration status. That's not what we're here for. And I think it goes deeper than that. And it's about equality. It's about having the same opportunities and being in the same playing field. And not just for us, but for our entire families. So I think it is a very symbolic, and more than symbolic, it's a great victory that we had. And it didn't come because Barack Obama gave it to us or because any politician was trying to be good to us. It was because we fought for it.
Okay, can you stay with me in this conversation, Dulce? Can you repeat again, because that's, I think, is a very, very deep concept. You're saying that no reform is going to be perfect because that's not really the issue. Can you repeat one more time what you think? And I believe many would agree with you. What is the issue in essence?
For me, it's about family unification. It's about being treated equally. It's about having access to higher education, not just for me, but other generations. I mean, I have a 4-year-old now, and I don't want him to grow up thinking that he cannot go to college, because that's what's happening to families right now, especially in mixed status families when the older siblings can go to college because of their immigration status. The younger ones who are citizens, they're witnessing that. And they're saying, well, if my brother can go, then neither can I. So I think that there's a lot of issues that we're talking about mainly about dreamers right now. We're talking mainly about immigration in general, but for me, it goes bigger than that, especially because we're in the United States. And if you start looking at what's going on around the world, we have 60 million people who are going through the same things that we're going around the world. They are displaced because of poverty. They're displaced because of economics. They're displaced because of political persecution. And I think that for me, the struggles that I went through, they're nothing compared to what is going around the world with the 60 million people who are displaced.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to have to go on our second break. You're listening to AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. We'll be right back.
Welcome to AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. Educate. Celebrate. Connect. Arizona Hispanic Connection.
Thank you. Thank you for staying with us. This is AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. A very, very touching, a very amazing subject today. We have 6 dreamers, or former dreamers, or still dreamers, or dreamers forever with us in the studio. And we're hearing about their stories and their experiences. So let's continue. The question that we have currently is, what did the granting of DACA mean to you? How did you react, and what did it mean to you?
Well, to me, I remember it was like being able to breathe again. My family was calling me, hey, Obama's going to say something on TV in the next 2 hours. People are calling me, my friends, family, teachers are reaching out to me. And this is the middle of the summer. And at that time, I was actually volunteering at a summer camp at ASU. So the little mentees were coming up to me because I had shared my story. It was exciting. I remember being on the radio that same day because they wanted my opinion on what was going on. And it changed my day. And it changed my life because up until that point, I had told people that I just needed to trust the process, that if I went to college one day, it's going to work out. And I was right in the middle of my college studies. So I knew that I could work. I actually had held off from learning to drive on purpose because I didn't want to have that temptation to drive.
So basically you couldn't drive.
No,
and if you did, you had to do it without a license.
I lived in the West Valley. I lived on 51st Avenue in McDowell. And I would take the bus and the light rail every day all the way to Tempe. On a bad day, it was 2 hours there and 2 hours back. But you have to do what you have to do to get your education. But even then, I'm a political scientist major. I knew what was coming. I knew that it wasn't a legislative bill. I knew it wasn't a law, and I knew that it was a Band-Aid. I was happy for the Band-Aid,
right.
But I knew that the day was going to come where it was either going to have to be replaced by something permanent. And I feared that day. I was optimistic that it would be a good alternative, but I always feared it. And as we saw this last year, the Band-Aid was pulled away.
Right. Now, help us just briefly to understand what were the benefits included in DACA. So what did a person get if the application was accepted?
You basically had to come out to the government and say, yes, I am here undocumented. Here's all my information. You know where to find me. And then the government, instead of pursuing deportation, they defer any action on your case.
That's what the word defer means.
Deferred action.
Okay.
So that means, in other words, we have limited budget, and we'd rather prioritize in removing these other individuals who may be a bigger harm to our society over these children who are either just working or studying, etc. So that granted us a work permit that we would have to renew every 2 years. And through this work permit...
Along with a Social Security number?
Exactly. Yeah, a Social Security number. We didn't take anybody's. It's our own individual number. Right. We could get driver's license. In Arizona, it was a little iffy at times. We had to take it and fight for it. But eventually, they did decide that deferred action individuals had the right to get their driver's license.
Okay, perfect.
For myself, I remember the day, and it was scary, to be honest. It was just like, I heard the news. It was 7 a.m. when I received a call. Hey, get into this conference call, and like you're gonna learn something new. And that's when like an announcement went on, right? And to me, one, I didn't know what that meant. Two, at that point, I was organizing the community, registering people to vote. Or I was doing like work, in the streets, like getting people to actually turn out and vote for a specific election. And so, to me, like, it didn't. I don't know. Like, it just at that moment, I was scared. I didn't know what it meant, and I was busy, so I decided not to worry about it and like check it out later. And so I ended up like doing my permit. I mean, getting into the process until like months after that, right? Like it literally took me months until an attorney came to us and was like, okay, you can take care of the community, but like you need to take care of yourselves. And so he literally put us into a room and like just had us work in our paperwork and submit all the documentation at the same time. So it was like thanks to him that we actually did it, to be honest. But I think DACA allowed our community to prove what we're about. It allowed us the opportunity to like showcase with numbers and with statistics and with things, like that people care so much about, because sometimes, to be honest, right, like we can tell our stories and we can tell them like what we have done and what we are about, but even like with some people that's really hard to understand, right? But if you show them, right, with the statistics that this amount of people have paid this amount of taxes, that have done this amount of things, like that's where it gets to it. So like I feel like DACA allowed us to do that, to prove everything that we got for
so
this
it basically
country.
To prove on the economic side that you are not a burden to the country but more contributors,
because we have never been like to be honest, I don't remember my family never asked for anything, right? Like my family always worked, even in the hard moments. Like we never have requested welfare and like all these things, different programs that we don't even qualify for it, right? Like if you're undocumented, you can't really get any of those benefits. And so I think that DACA allows, in the general, sense, as dreamers, to be able to prove that if they allow people to have a small opportunity, which is like a work permit, that we can contribute and that we can do a lot more, right? So like imagine if they could do that with like the whole 11 million people that are out there, right? Like that will make a huge impact.
And and as soon as somebody is in payroll, in some employers' payroll, there's a 6.2% of your income that goes to Social Security automatically, 1.45 for Medicare. So you basically have been contributing already to Social Security and Medicare even before you had DACA, and now especially more that you have your permit and everything. So, I think people sometimes kind of have this wrong concepts, I believe.
So I found out about DACA, when they announced it, probably, was it July 12th? When June? Yeah. I was, like I said, I was in sixth grade. I was still like kind of little kid. I was outside playing, and then I go inside to go get a drink of water, and I see my mom and my sister right there at the TV, sitting down at the TV, and they're watching Obama give the deferred action announcement, and like I'm like, oh, cool, what is this? Like, I didn't know what it was until probably like when I got into high school, when I actually started like learning more about it, because like I still wasn't like driven for like I'm undocumented. What can I do? Like, it wasn't until my sophomore year that I got involved with Mi Familia Vota, and I started like volunteering and all this, and that's really when like I opened my eyes to like I'm deferred. Like I'm DACA. I need to do something. Like I can't just sit around waiting for other people to do something. So I would go out canvas. I think that year for the summer I canvassed like over 100 hours for sure. And then I met Raquel Teran. I'm sure a lot of you guys know who she is. She's running for office this upcoming year, and she actually got me a scholarship for my DACA. And she got someone to fill it out and everything. So like that was really special to me, because she took a lot of interest in me to be able to. I mean, it's $400. Where can you come up with that? Right. So I was pretty happy about that. And then as to what DACA gives me, it probably gives me the opportunity to do a lot of stuff. So one of the things that I want to do in the future, hopefully if they pass the DREAM Act, is to be able to travel the world. You know, I feel like I'm like a fish in water, like Sal said. I want to go out, like I want to go into the ocean, like I want to see everything that there is out there. Wow. And like right now, I can go like anywhere in the U.S. Okay. But I want to go further out.
Right. Perfect. Great. Because of time, let's move to a very important area I consider. What have you been able to do with DACA in terms of either work experience or education or careers, your professions? Can you share where are you at this point in your professional lives?
Well, right now, I recently applied to AutoZone, and going through that process, I got the job. So it's very relieved I can finally start working. That was just a big step. And then right now, I'm working on getting towards my driver's license. And so that way I don't have that fear of being pulled over that I have. And I've always had that fear because I go to 2 schools ever since last year. So I would only have like 4 or 5 classes at high school, and then I would travel 60 miles to and back just to go to my second school. And so the only way to get there would be either by car or by bus, but that would be like a good 4 hours, 3 hours.
So you're still in school?
Yes, I'm still
and working.
Yes.
And what are you pursuing in terms of education?
In terms of education, it's very iffy because I don't know what I want to do with my life yet. So I don't know if I'm really interested in the trades, or I want to go something for, a profession and things like that. But definitely I want to pursue in higher education.
Right. Perfect. Dulce?
So I am now a citizen. I had my work permit, but
congratulations.
Not through DACA. Thank you. And ever since I was able to get my work permit and then my residency, I think I've been able to grow professionally. I am an owner. I'm an entrepreneur. I have a real estate company, 4 offices, 20 agents, and I helped a lot of people with DACA buy properties. And just an interesting fact that here in Arizona, there's about 89,000 individuals who are undocumented or have DACA that are homeowners. And nationwide, it's even bigger. It's like 3.1 million people who are undocumented or have DACA and are homeowners. So I think that's something that it's very important to point out because, like somebody, I think you said it earlier, we're contributors, we're taxpayers. If we pay rent, we're paying taxes, property taxes indirectly, but if we're homeowners, we're also paying taxes. And so I think that I'm very grateful for those opportunities, and that's why I'm involved, because I want everybody to have the same opportunities that I did.
Yeah. And I sometimes have said that if there's a group that deserves to be here, it's talking about marriage and all that kind of good stuff. It's the dreamers, I mean, who doesn't want to have a group of younger people, professionals, driven? It's just an amazing group. We have to go on our last break, but we'll come back and I know you were ready to go, Jessica, but we'll come back and stay with us. This is AARP Arizona Hispanic Connection. We'll be right back.
Welcome to AARP Arizona Hispanic Connection. Educate. Celebrate. Connect. Arizona Hispanic Connection.
Thank you. Thank you for staying with us. This is AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. The subject today is dreamers. Who are they? And the question that we have posed is, how have you been able to take advantage of DACA professionally? Go ahead, Jessica.
So I actually was going to school before DACA existed, so it didn't it didn't change anything to me. I still paid the same because I was going to a private school, so it didn't change a lot to me. I think it was thanks to the movement that was created here that allowed us to actually have driver's license, that I was able to get a driver's license. I think that's one of the things that could change in my life and the movement, because it was not by itself. And then also, I think, for me, it allowed me to be free in a sense, right? Like, it allowed me to be relieved, to know that, like, if I was going outside and, like, if I had any encounter with the police, I was not going to be deported.
Right.
It allowed me to move all of the cars in my family to my name and be sure that those cars were not going to be towed for 30 days if we ever had to be stopped, right? Like, that was the thing, and that's a lot of money. Like, that's over almost $1,000 every single time your car gets stopped.
Right.
So it allowed me to bring a little bit of safety to my family.
Right.
And
have you finished, gotten any kind of degree, or you're working on it, or where are you on that?
I'm done. So I got my bachelor's degree in business administration, and then I got my bachelor's degree in secondary education.
Two?
Yeah.
Whoa. Very briefly, because of time, is ALAS your organization?
Yeah. Yeah.
And is ALAS like ALAS?
Well, in English, it's called Academic and Leadership Accelerator for Service.
And you
ALAS,
started that?
I started that right after I finished college. I figured that I was passionate about education, but I also wanted to make sure that our young individuals had a mission to contribute to the community even when they were pursuing their education, and that they take that social consciousness and that they identify the systemic problems that they were facing to figure out what careers they were going to go into, right?
I hope that you stop being dreamers soon, and you know what sense I mean it. But if not, or even if so, we have to get you back in the show. There's so much more that I know you want to share, but because of time, if we can continue with you and then go this way.
So for me, I barely graduated high school in 2017. So this past year was my freshman year at PC. I don't know if a lot of you guys have felt this, but like when your DACA is about to expire and you don't know what to do, you start stressing, right? So I was actually stressing a lot during my final year in senior year, and my grades dropped heavily. Like I had more than enough credits to graduate. I just needed 2 classes to pass, and I was taking 7. I failed probably those other 5, and I passed the 2 that I needed. And then
this is kind of like because you felt
I felt
out
like,
of it, frustrated.
I felt out of it. I felt like if I lose my DACA, like I don't know, I was just stressing. I couldn't think. I couldn't focus on school. But then what is it? My freshman year in college, then I finally like started getting back into it. I had A's in my classes, and then again, March is coming so close, and then I started struggling again, and I failed 2 of my classes. I passed the other 2 that I was taking, and then finally I hear that from California that the judge passed the law that we could renew our DACA. So then as soon as that happened, I called up Sal, and he made it happen. He helped me fill it out. I sent it in that very Friday, and then I actually have the appointment for the 15th for the fingerprints and everything. So I'm pretty psyched about that. Yeah, as to what I can do with DACA, I got my driver's license. I'm on my third job now. I was working at Mi Familia Bota for a little bit as a canvasser. Then I worked at a mechanic shop, not really for me though. And then now I'm at a boba shop, and pretty good right now.
Great.
Life of a college student.
Great. Well, keep it up.
Thank you.
I was just like Jessica. I was already at the university when that happened. I entered in 2009, and like I mentioned briefly, I don't think does it open opportunities? Yes. I mean, I was able to go into research programs that otherwise I wouldn't have gone. But at the same time, I self-empowered myself. I mean, I flew to 12 states in high school undocumented at the age of 14. Wow. Started at the age of 14. Against my parents, was like, no, you're going to get detained. I was like, what is the officer going to do? Right. If they ask for my driver's license, say, buy me a car, my parents can't afford it. Mm-hmm. So I've always been like, I'll show you a license if you buy me a car, you know. Just with my high school idea, I would travel. So I was never fearful, and I never let fear take over me. But there's many in that not everyone has the same, I guess, environment or just mental mindset. And unfortunately, it has hurt a lot of people. A lot of students have committed suicide over this issue. There's ones that live in distress day to day. So like I said, a lot of us are self-empowered in this room, and we make it happen regardless. But the reality is different for the majority of us.
So you're saying that the group that kind of you resemble out there is kind of small, and that there's a larger percentage of dreamers who are really, really feeling this?
Yes.
And then becoming distressed and even take it to that extreme.
Yes.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Salvador?
Like Tanari said, I was also in college when this happened. But I was just excited because now I knew that I could work afterwards. And I went back to work for a nonprofit that helped me get to where I am, Aguila Youth Leadership Institute. Then decided to work with them and helping high school students prepare to go to college. At that point, I had actually given up on my dream of being an attorney because you hear all this negativity. You're going to go into debt. It's going to take a while. You're not going to find employment. But when I was motivating the high school students, like Andres, they threw it back in my face and said, if you're telling us to follow our dreams, why haven't you followed yours? So I went back to college and I went into law school. Have since graduated this last May, passed the bar. To my knowledge, I'm the current only DACA-mented individual that's an attorney now in the state. My boss, Daniel Rodriguez.
Are you the one that Mrs. H brags about?
Yes. My boss, Daniel Rodriguez, he was a DACA a recipient when he passed the bar. Since then, he's become a permanent resident. So we both work together at a law firm just down the hall from here. But it's definitely changed my life. I can't adjust because of my spouse. My spouse is also a dreamer. And she has proven everybody wrong as well. She went to college on a full ride, has received her master's in healthcare administration, and now works for that same university. So I think you have to continue to try to motivate people that even when they don't think that there's a door or a window out there, it's possible. Knock the wall down, you know? And that, I mean that in every sense of the word, knock the wall down.
You're right. I understand.
You got it?
You wanted to add something, Jessica?
Yeah, I think, well, as Taneri was mentioning, like, when you ask the question, who are dreamers and what have they got from DACA, right? It's more, I mean, yeah, like, there is a number of people who are successful and who have improved their lives with DACA. Yes, there are. But we, as dreamers, we are humans, right? We are humans. We are women. We are men. We are the people that you grew up with, right? And you want to... Okay.
I mean, just to repeat what you were saying and reiterate it, you know, the question was, what has DACA done for dreamers? And I think the question should be, what has DACA done for America? Because we've always been here.
Okay.
You know, and if anything, they just put a spotlight on us where they pulled us from the shadows, but we've always been contributing.
Right.
And now they're just actually we're taking claim of it. We're just not a ghostwriter. We're actually putting our name on it.
And just, I mean, like I was mentioning, I think more than, some of us are really successful, but as well, like, we are the humans who struggle in math. We are the humans who went through depression. We are the humans who could be stopped, and because, like, we don't have the right, things in the car or whatever it is, we are the humans who make mistakes too. So I don't want to get the message that all dreamers are perfect and all dreamers went to school and all dreamers have these opportunities, because at the end of the day, we are humans and we go through struggles, and not because we, like, some of us could even have a misdemeanor. Some of us could, and that doesn't mean that we're bad people, right? It's just like,
mistakes.
It means that we make mistakes. We are human and we have, like, things to offer, but sometimes our previous experiences have impacted our lives in a way that we can't make the right decisions or we can't go into the right pathways. So
Right. So, I did want to get sorry to use this word, sample of other experiences. It so happens that most of you happen to be could take in the career school or education path. I'm sure there are many who have not taken the educational path and they've just gone to work. And like you said, many struggle, and maybe it would have been good to also have, but a lot of times when you put together a show, you kind of like in a hurry, and it's very difficult.
The conversation doesn't end with the show.
Right.
The conversation is every day. Your neighbors, your coworkers, we're out there. So I encourage everybody, even if you don't know Spanish, if you don't know a dreamer, try to be a little bit more open mind, open your eyes, because we're there. And the only way that we're going to make any progress in our country is by telling our stories.
Right. We have about a minute, and I almost feel that sufferings always bring the best in people. It builds your character, and regrettably, that's almost the only way. If you have everything given to you, sometimes it just doesn't happen. So any final thoughts, any realizations, conclusions, learnings about the human race, the human being? I assume that sometimes you feel like the spotlight is on you. You feel like signal. You feel like, any final thoughts on realizations about just almost like you were saying, Dulce, there's so much going on even in other countries. So what is it, those feelings, those realizations like?
Just some final thoughts is just basically that, we're dreamers here, but we're not here to take anyone else's, opportunities, just like Jessica said, we're all humans. We all have, the right to succeed as well as the right to fail. It's just, what you're willing to put in is what you get out. And so as dreamers, we've always worked hard in our lives because we come from struggles and we don't want to be there. And so we've turned it around and just worked harder. And so that's why a lot of people see us as successful.
Yeah, thank you.
And as Dulce mentioned, it's there's a lot of inequality. We're going through gentrification, displacements. There's a lot of work to do in workforce development, healthcare access. My parents till this day still don't have health insurance. So there's so many issues underlying the bigger issue of immigration that no one is talking about. Those specifically topics that relate to immigrants.
We definitely have to get you back on another show. We ran out of time. Thank you so very much. Thank you for fighting. Thank you for representing so many out there. Thank you for all the work you've done. Thank you for coming to our show very, very much. Thank you for joining us today. This was AARP Arizona Hispanic Connection. Have a great week.